in hockey news this week, not a lot on the ice. We're going to go to something off the ice, and that is the recent, I don't know if firing is the right word, removal of Jeff Merrick from Sportsnet. I believe he had been there 13 years was the number.
It was a long time.
And it was a kind of shoved him to the rug thing where he stopped popping up on the 32 Thoughts podcast for a little bit, and it was just like rumors flying. He eventually confirmed that he had left Sportsnet, but didn't give a confirmation behind it. There's a story that was posted in The Athletic today, as of recording, that went into a lot more detail about it, and I just think it's something that's really interesting. We'll get into it here. Before I kind of set up some of the details, I just want to credit Katie Strang and Dan Robson, who are the writers for
It's an incredible article.
this article in The Athletic.
It is
an incredible article. Yeah, I may or may not talk about The Athletic more later in the podcast as part of, I'm going to spoil my shout out, but the stuff that goes on over there is incredible. Great sports writing. But to kind of give the skinny on it, the issue that the people in The Athletic pointed to as potentially the reason for Merrick leaving Sportsnet was to do with gambling, and specifically not Merrick gambling himself, but the leaking of insider information to other sources to potentially have an impact in this world.
It was not his translator.
I'll read. It was no, no. It was not. It was not Jeff Merrick's translator. So I'll just kind of take out some bits and pieces from this article to give some context. So they say, as part of Sportsnet's crew the night of the draft, Merrick was privy to the draft selections before they were publicly announced. This is common practice for broadcast rights holders. Basically, in order to set up their analysis of it, they'll get the pick in advance so they can prepare for it. So they said also in the sphere that evening was someone named Mark Seidel, who was a former NHL scout with the Wild, no longer employed there. They've known each other for years, and basically on this guy Seidel's Twitter account, he was correctly predicting multiple picks in a row before they happened, and that kind of brought up concerns that Jeff Merrick was tipping off Seidel as to what picks were going to happen. So now, just to again take from the Athletic, is that the league was concerned about the potential misuse or dissemination of insider information. Gaming industry experts said that draft leakage and tipping is relatively common, but it becomes an issue if that information is used as a means of financial gain. Lots of this is still pretty fuzzy. Even in the article, it makes it clear that this is very much a situation in flux. There could be a lot more to come with this, but we have the kind of skeleton of what this looks like. The reason Jeff Merrick is gone is because of this potential leaking of information to Seidel that has an impact on gambling because of this insider information being leaked, potentially having money being earned not in a fair way. And now, that was a big intro, lots of context, but I'll just kind of throw it over to you, Simon, to say, what do you think about this whole situation, just in kind of broad strokes?
It's really tough. It's really tough because of, and I was saying this to you before, because of how little we know. I think I generally do not like to speculate on this type of thing because I think normally there's not a lot of merit in it. Unless there's like actual evidence, I have a hard time believing it because of how much integrity I think you need to get or have to get this far for the most part. And I think with Merrick obviously spending 13 years working his way up in Sportsnet to get to where he was, I don't know. Maybe it's like the part of me that wants to believe that there's like, I don't know. I think I have a hard time believing it, I guess, is kind of what I'm saying. But they do bring up a lot of very good points. I think there's a lot of things in this article that I think definitely are interesting conversation pieces. it's a tough situation. It's really tough because, as I said to you before, this shit happens. Like, part of me feels like this is their way of like trying to put an answer to something that might not have one. Like, Merrick could have just left. Like, Merrick his contract might have ran out at the end of this. It's a lot of silence for a contract ending. I will say that, but that could have been the case as well.
Yeah, I think there would have been more.
You'd think they would have, like,
Yeah.
made a huge thing about it ending, like they did with Tim and Sid, and I think they did it with Jay and Dan as well. But like, usually there's something else there, so I get that. I'm sure maybe there was something happening behind the scenes, but gambling is just insane. Like, it's just such a wild jump, I guess, out of like having a 14-year career and then all of a sudden it's entirely gone because you felt like telling somebody the draft picks before they happened. Like, it's a crazy way to throw away a career. It's just outlandish.
It is, and it feels like more like, I wonder if naivety is the downfall, because I think about it in terms of this world where sports gambling is still on the whole a fairly new thing. At the start of Jeff Merrick's career, tipping off these picks to someone on Twitter to like help them analyze it, or same kind of thing, like have that analysis ready for when the pick goes live, or even posting about the pick a little bit before it happens. I mean, we see other insiders do this, right? I think that's a whole another point that I could make. Like, this isn't like the only time where I've seen insiders have a pick on social media before they actually announce it.
It's different,
it's
different when you're on the desk. It's very different when you're on the desk, though. That's the immediate response I'll quickly throw out to that, because I kind of like I don't know if rolled my eyes is the right thing. I kind of like shrugged when you said that they're told beforehand what the picks are, because I don't think that's entirely true either. I have a funny feeling there is probably insiders giving them who they think it's going to be, but there's still a lot of shock. It's not like they're being told 100%. It's not like the teams are walking up to the desk and going, hey, Jeff, this is who I'm taking. That's not happening. Like, for the most part, there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. Like, I imagine they are ready for, like, all the graphics, I'm sure, are made way ahead of time, no matter who goes where. Like, I'm sure they've made like hundreds of different graphics. You hear that about social media as well. Like, there's a lot of other stuff, I think, going on, is more my point. Like, I think saying that they know way before is,
well, I think it's not way before. I do think it's important just to like take the context of the article here, because what they say makes sense. It's not that they know way before, but what they say is that the production truck is notified of the pick approximately 1 or 2 minutes before it's made, so that graphics can be prepared, video clips ready, and cameras trained on the player about to find out that he has been selected.
No, that actually, never mind. I take it back. That sounds more accurate.
Yeah.
But
it's
you
not
also
like
can't bet on it
a
minute
like
early.
way before.
You can't bet on it a minute early, can you?
Yeah, I'm sure you probably can on like an app or something.
Really? Is there?
Who knows? I don't think either of us are. I don't know if either of us are. That.
Yeah, we're the wrong person to talk about it. Absolutely, but neither of us have any experience in it. But
I will also say to that point, it is an interesting thing, because if it is this 1 to 2 minute window, the other thing the article is not very clear on, the other thing we don't have a lot of information on, is how the gambling side of it is linked and where the profit might have been made. Because the connection that's made in the article is between Merrick and Seidel. Merrick leaks the information to Seidel. Seidel leaks the information on Twitter. Now, was it that Seidel was making money off of this? The article makes it very clear that Merrick, I don't think, based on the testimonies of people around him,
there is someone right here where there's a point where it says, one source briefed on the draft night situation said that no gambling impropriety was discovered, or any intent for Merrick to gain financially from what happened. So they did come out and basically say, even if Merrick was like giving this information out, he wasn't making money off of it. So
Yeah,
I don't know if
it's
that
not.
necessarily makes it
He's
better.
not.
Yeah,
Well, I think it does. I think it does because I think that's a whole nother conversation.
but if your friends
Like
are
I
making
think where
money,
I
if
currently,
money's being made, then it's still bad.
I guess. Well, we don't even know. We don't even know if Siegel's
Yes,
the one
exactly. Of
making
course.
money here, right? Is it that like I think that's the thing that's unclear to me. Is Siegel making money off of this? Or is it that he's leaking the information to social media, where then his social media followers can make money off of it? I think that's kind of what's implied in the article, and I think that's a whole other thing, where it's like, is Merrick getting axed because of this long chain of
I
causation, to where I'd be totally like, that would make sense in my head to say, he just wouldn't know about that.
are we
And that
to
was kind of, I was
assume
kind of making this.
Are we to assume that this is the only place that this is happening? Because I'm sure a lot of these betting
Yeah.
experts have sources, right? Like it's not like they're just pulling shit out of their ass. Like a lot of them talk to these insiders. I'm sure. Like so, at least to me,
Oh yeah.
I feel like not to say again, this is different. If he's getting canned specifically for this draft, then that's weird. But if or no, that's if all of these things are true, it makes sense. As weird as I don't know why I said it's weird, but it makes sense because giving the picks away 1 minute before, I don't know, man. Are we really? Maybe Seedle had like maybe his TV was running a minute early or some shit. I don't know. Like there's a lot of things that could have been happening. I don't know. It's such like, an odd situation.
Yeah, it's odd, and I think to your point, I think the kind of position I'll take on it is just like, I think it's stupid that he would get fired for this, but I also think it is something he should have known better on. Like, well, I don't know why he would be leaking those picks in the first place. Like, it's not like this guy is working for Sportsnet, or anything. Like, there's no real reason other than just the friendship for him to do that, and that is a very much a blind spot. I have a hard time believing that Jeff Merrick was leaking these picks with the intention of making money in the gambling space or having other people make money. Like, that doesn't make sense to me at all. I don't know. It feels like, because of the gambling space, this punishment is a lot worse than it would have been, let's say, 5 years ago. I wonder if this is something that Jeff Merrick has been doing for a while, because they mentioned that Siegel has had, like,
yes.
Yeah, they talk about, like, Cutter Gauthier, where it's like Siegel, like, in that 2022 draft, called, I think they said, the first 12 picks. Which, yeah, you don't do that unless you know something, right? Like, you can't. That's not just luck.
And there was also talks about I don't know again, I was reading Twitter, but I saw people saying Frank Saravelli often does the same thing and stuff like that. So it's like yeah. So it's not like it's unknown for insiders to have inside information, but it's it's a complicated thing. I'd say I'm more curious on where we see Merrick next. I was talking to you a bit about this, Caleb, before the podcast, to my understanding of how a lot of these types of contracts work from my small experience in this industry. I've seen some people be basically I've lost the word. I can't remember what there is an actual name for the type of contract, but basically they get blacklisted because of the amount of advertising that was done on them. So that basically they can't work for a certain amount of time until the company deems that the advertising doesn't apply anymore. Basically, makes sense. What I've heard of in the past firsthand is, or yes, I guess it still technically would be. I talked to someone who was blacklisted, is what I'm saying, and they were kept out of working for a year and got paid by the company who did it. Basically, is how it worked. In his contract, they were allowed to do that. I'm curious if we're going to have a similar or see a similar situation with Merrick, where a lot of people have come out and said, "Oh, it's going to be cool seeing him go to TSN and go work with all of the guys over there." It'll be interesting to see if that happens. I mean, obviously, we're going to have to wait for the fallout of this gambling thing, but I think
will TSN hire him? Like, that's the thing. Right, because who knows? So something that was really interesting. I was reading up on Dan O'Toole obviously used to host
Yes.
SportsCenter with Jay and Dan here in Canada. Um, and I read an article about him because he's appearing in all these commercials for the Olympics. I don't know if you've seen any of them, but I was
I
like, oh,
haven't
I know
yet.
who that is. I wonder what he's doing now. And one of the interviews he did was basically talking about how it's incredibly difficult to find another position after being fired from TSN because basically Sportsnet and TSN are the only employers for that type of position, right? Like I don't think he can really go anywhere else with that, at least with that level of exposure, right? So that's something I wonder with Merrick. Like, is he going to get another job like this? Because TSN is
Probably
really the
not.
only other place he can go,
Yeah.
which
And TSN
sucks,
has their
right? Like I
guys.
don't know,
I've heard some people say
yeah,
he should go to the
yeah,
Daily Face Off and go work with Sarah Volley. I did hear that as well. It's another option, I
yeah,
guess. Because, I mean, with
yeah,
his. He is technically an insider, I think, isn't he? That makes it a
yeah.
bit easier than what Dan O'Toole was doing, because Dan was
It's
just
a hope.
a. He's a host, which makes it a bit tougher. I think insiders are a lot more. Because insiders will be brought in for the amount of names on their contact list, basically, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's that type of thing. You're buying the contact list. So I think. I think that's definitely part of it. I feel like Merrick will have an easier time than O'Toole did. At least if I were to give a guess, assuming there's not something
I
in
would
the
agree.
contract.
I would agree.
Yeah.
But it is still an interesting angle, I
Yep.
think. Just to see where he might go next. Yeah, I don't know. It just to kind of have that perspective and comparing that to I don't know. I feel like even in the worst case scenario, how severe this whole situation would be, which I think is not that much. I don't know. It really does feel like for a 13-year professional who's front facing on a lot of their biggest stuff, it just feels like an odd move to make to have him be axed for this. Was it was it wrong? Should he have known better? Probably. Yeah. Do I think it was done intentionally based off everything I've heard? No. Um, I think it's just a really strange situation in general. The hush hush around it all is also very interesting. Talk about Elliot Friedman in this article not commenting on anything.
Pretty much no one would
Merrick
comment,
has
which is
really
the
only,
oddest part.
yeah, nobody, like
I mean, I
even Merrick
guess.
himself, like radio silence for a while and then just saying, yeah, I'm gone, but no other details.
Yeah, with a lot of sources saying that he probably signed a. What was the name of it again? No,
Like an NDA.
an NDA. Yes, there you go. Probably signing an NDA about the entire situation. Which you got to wonder if the gambling committee. I forget the name of them as well, but you got to wonder if they're gonna try and do something about it, or if everybody's just gonna let this disappear. That's more the question I have.
Yeah.
Because that's what that
Who
was my
knows?
immediate reaction to it. Was like, I don't know if anything's gonna actually happen. He's already been fired. What else could you slap on? Are you gonna give him a fine? That sucks, but he's just lost his job. Like, I feel that's significantly
Yeah.
worse than any fine you could give him. So I think he's
Yeah.
kind of already paying for it a little bit. So at least, I mean, we'll see what happens. I'm sure more will come up or come out in the next little bit as to why this entire situation is happening. If it doesn't, then it'll just end up kind of going away in a weird way. I don't, and there's not much we can do about it because that's just how the industry kind of works. The wheel keeps spinning, no matter who's
Yeah.
running on it. So it's so I don't know. I don't have much to say on it other than that. If we
I
we'll
mean,
see if we hear more about it.
it is a bit. It is a bit of a downer of an ending, but it's a kind of a
It's a
downer of
true
an
one.
industry
It's
at
a true one.
times.
It is absolutely a downer of an industry. It's a very tough industry. So you get the limelight for as long as you get it, and then once it's done, it's done. So hopefully it's not done for Jeff Merrick. I think a lot of people definitely enjoyed his stuff. So I think I hope he lands on his feet regardless. I think he did something stupid. I don't think he necessarily deserves to lose his entire livelihood for it. We'll see what ends up happening. Assuming he did something stupid, we don't know. But like
Yeah.
with who knows what ended up actually happening. But again, we'll see.